Being a PlayStation Vita owner was kinda like being a Wii U sympathizer. But when Freedom Wars was released in 2014, hope spread across the community. Everyone was talking about it, including prominent voices in the industry, as it connected players in other ways that games haven't capitalized on. While there were titles like Soul Sacrifice and God Eater that were fun, their niche appeal might have kept them from reaching a broader audience. Whatever the case may be, I remember fighting for my Panopticon every day for months. And while I'm not really sure if the release of Freedom Wars Remastered will bring that feeling back after playing, I am surprised at how well this game aged.
Enemy effector immobilized. Revive and peaceful comfort zone.
Freedom Wars Remastered, from a narrative standpoint, is the exact same as the original. Still, this version offers an English dub, which does a decent job of delivering the story and making it a bit more engaging. I compared some of the scenes with the original, and it does appear that this version uses the original localization. I'd say that the tone leans heavily into anime character tropes, but there's some pretty epic scenes that were cool to see acted out in English. The accessory characters even use text-to-speech like the original Japanese release, delivering awkwardly spoken words.
Good morning. Incoming message from the Committee for Social Selection.
Freedom Wars takes place on Earth in the far, far future. Humans have grouped up in cities known as Panopticons, but are unable to live on the surface due to a technological threat known as abductors. Abductors come in a few different types, but their main goal is to abduct citizens. Now, I might be getting a little ahead of myself here, but there's a class system within the Panopticons, separating the citizens and sinners. As the Panopticons rival for resources, citizens are yet another crucial tool to developing a sustainable Panopticon, and that's when these rivals will send abductors to kidnap citizens or simply attack other cities to put them at a disadvantage. Now, there are other classes of humans that make an appearance in this adventure, but I'll leave that for you to unfold. In this game, players assume the role of a sinner with a million-year sentence to protect the Panopticon and its citizens. Sinners are seen as lower class or expendable, as they are often sent out to die on missions and treated poorly. However, that doesn't have to be the case, as sinners can decrease their sentence by taking on these missions and collecting resources. As you decrease your sentence, you'll gain access to new rights and customizations. At the beginning of the game, many of your actions will result in extra 50-year sentences or the like. This initial shock does a great job of adding frustration to your sinner situation. It's hard to trust anything anyone says most of the time, and your accessory is constantly watching over your shoulder. The game loop lends itself well to the narrative, as I rarely was blocked off from progression and naturally got through the story, unlocking everything I wanted without being forced to grind levels. That said, in the later hours of the game, your attention may shift anywhere from completing side quests to gathering specific resources for something you want to craft to then actually finishing story missions. There's more ways than one to spend your time. The story itself does offer some decent twists, which has more depth and character lore than I would have guessed for a game like this, but it's appreciated to ground you in this world. Similar to the story, the systems of Freedom Wars Remastered are pretty much identical to the original. There is a more straightforward crafting system, I believe, which was needed, but I'd say it's still tough to navigate. The problem isn't really understanding it, it's mostly navigating the countless menus of the game and then trying to remember where everything was. As you complete missions and purchase rights, you can eventually craft stuff and customize the loadouts of the sinner and accessory. Crafting is a lot of fun if you have the right parts. If you don't, it can be a little irritating to go looking for the pieces, but as I said before, the game does a great job of naturally rolling out options throughout the campaign. Weapon customizations is required to take down abductors. Given that after you enter Class 4, they do become significantly more aggro and the mission timers are less lenient. To help, there's some depth to the weapon customizations where players can attach elements and even fine-tune equipment with additional parts to make them stronger. The weapon upgrade system is very confusing because each weapon is a little different even if they have the same name. However, menu navigation is still this game's worst enemy, and I'm sure you'll hear me complain about that at least one more time in this review. Customization leads to the look of your center and accessory, which I found very, very fun. I didn't mention this before, but as you complete missions, you'll gain points to purchase rights. While the more essential rights allow you to run for longer than 10 seconds, others, like new costumes and colors for your characters, are purely for individuality. And sure, this might all sound minor, but while you play through the campaign, it's all you dream about. It's as if you begin to despise the starter gear and your ego rises as you see others with higher life sentences than you. Honestly, the narrative sets all that up. It's honestly really cool to experience, and I felt that this was a great display of solid game design using well-known systems. There are so many things missing from when you start the game. I alluded to this before, but after you begin, you aren't able to actually run for very long, be too far from your accessory, or even rest. As you unlock rides, you slowly access new options and ways to enjoy the game, including a handy fast travel system. However, this leads to menu overload, as being in your room alone has 3 different menus to access for information, each packed with submenus upon submenus. I was never able to get comfortable with remembering where a specific option was, which does have the negative effect of things like forgetting where to upgrade weapons or forgetting to donate to your Panopticon. There are several mission types such as capturing a flag, destroying an enemy, or holding a point, but each of these is timed. Before you dispatch, you can create a party. After this, the loading times are strangely long for a 10-year-old Vita game playing even on PS5 Pro, which is evident before matches or going into a room from another room. Anyway, depending on your loadout, you're tasked with taking enemies down and saving citizens. One weapon every player has is a grapple whip that allows you to swing to high ledges, pull down enemies, or even attach to enemies to sever a limb. This is where the gameplay loop borrows from games like Monster Hunter and God Eater. Players are tasked with taking down large creatures and collecting their dropped resources. Some of the cooler things you can do is target specific pieces of an enemy to make the fight quicker. For instance, you can focus on the capsules containing the citizens and free them quicker than it would take to take the enemy completely down. Or you can attach to a large enemy and sever their core. This option takes some time as you have to mash a button to accomplish it, and enemies will shake you off eventually. The maps are all pretty unique, but prepare to see them multiple times. I like the more vertical maps as they require you to be skillful with the whip swings to navigate the battlefield quicker. Still, missions are pretty long, lasting anywhere from 10 to 30 minutes, so keep that in mind before jumping into one. The online component of this game has you fighting other Panopticons for resources and leverage. Seeing how these Panopticons fill up when more players join will be interesting, and as of this writing, Tokyo is dominating, but I'm eager to see more players fight for their community. The experience as a whole is satisfying. While the opening chapters are full of frustratingly trying to understand the penalty system, the experience really finds its footing in the later hours. There are about 40 hours of campaign here, depending on how you spend your time or if you find yourself taking on missions in the Sail Garden, which then introduces a highly bare-bones stealth element in some areas. While the visuals can appear a bit dated, I was still having fun. Freedom Wars Remastered's biggest competitor will likely be Monster Hunter Wilds, but I feel like there's a community that can still appreciate this more straightforward approach to the hunting genre. Sure, it may not be that deep, but I find the approachable systems and rollout of features in Freedom Wars to make it easy to consume from the perspective of a casual fan of this genre. Freedom Wars has always been a great game, and Freedom Wars Remastered only solidifies that. While I wish more attention was put into refining the player experience through added guidance, improved menus, and faster load times, what's here is a fun time. Once you complete the campaign, there are plenty of ways to spend your time in the online modes, and I can only hope to see an increase in community-driven Panopticon events that rival what Vita players were able to bring together back in the day. While I don't think this will satisfy those craving a Monster Hunter-esque experience, I did have a ton of fun returning to this world. Noisy Pixel is giving Freedom Wars Remastered a 7.5 out of 10. Thanks for watching. This video is brought to you by our supporters on Patreon. Noisy Pixel is run by a group of gamers providing independent gaming coverage through news, reviews, previews, and more. Check out our Patreon to help support our continued growth, and subscribe to keep up with all our future content.
Noisy Pixel.